So today I'm gonna continue reading Think and Grow Rich from um, chapter one. Chapter one was titled "Thoughts Are Things" in my copy. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device known at that time as the Edison dictating machine. The salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. It had crawled in quietly, hidden in a queer-looking machine which interested no one but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association, Barnes made himself rich in money, but he did something infinitely greater. He proved that one really may think and grow rich. How much actual cash the original desire Barnes was worth to him, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it brought him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it is, becomes insignificant when it is compared to the greater asset he acquired in the form of definite knowledge that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into material rewards by the application of known principles. Barnes literally thought himself into partnership with the great Edison. He thought himself into fortune. He had nothing to start with except the capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by the desire until he realized it. So here in this story we're seeing that Barnes didn't know how it was going to happen, what steps he was going to have to take, but he had a burning desire, and with that burning desire plus determination, sticking to that desire, he eventually realized the opportunity and took action on that opportunity to have his burning desire manifest. 3 feet from gold. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Darby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold had been mined from the thoughts of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. They got together the money for the needed machinery and had it shipped. The uncle and Darby went back to work the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to the smelter. The return proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of the ore would clear the debts, then would come the big killings and profit. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Darby and Uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junkman for a few $100s and took the train back home. The junkman called a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. This calculation showed the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junkman took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. So, obviously, there are some people that don't know enough about the business they're getting themselves into, so they'll give up too easily. And sometimes it's as simple as seeking expert advice, someone that's done what you're doing for longer, whether it's, a mentor, a coach, teacher, whatever you want to call the person, an expert that will know enough to point you in the right direction. Sometimes it's easy to quit when, we've run into a wall and had some kind of failure. But, it's better to seek advice, and in this case, the junk man that bought the machinery made a fortune because he knew enough to seek out that advice that Darby and his uncle, didn't think to do. I will never stop because men say no. Long afterward, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over when he made the discovery that the desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into business of selling life insurance. Remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. Darby became one of a small group of men who sell over $1 million in life insurance annually. He owed his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quitability in the gold mining business. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. So, as we can see, our experiences can teach us things. You don't just learn from your successes, but you can also learn from your failures or temporary defeats. And sometimes, our failures teach us what doesn't work so we can try different ways to look for the way that does work. And, in much the same way that you would get a mentor to learn how to do something faster, you can also learn from their mistakes to know what to avoid. because if you don't have to make the same mistakes they did, you can also make your journey to your goal faster too. More than 500 of the most successful men in this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight in tripping one when success is almost within reach. A 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Darby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no doesn't necessarily mean no. One afternoon he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly the door was opened and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked out roughly, "What do you want?" Meekly the child replied, "My mammy says send her 50 cents. "I'll not do it," the uncle retorted. "Now you run home." "Yes, sah," the child replied, but she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work, so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, "I told you to go on home. Now go, or I'll take a switch to you." The little girl said, "Yes, but she did not budge. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper, picked up a barrel stave, and started towards the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness an assault. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward one step, looked up in his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, "My mammy gotta have that 50 cents. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly laid the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out $50 and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed towards the door, never taking her eyes off the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, Uncle sat down on the box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did the child use that made her master of the situation? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. Strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author in the old mill on the very spot where the uncle took his whipping. So there's a lot to unpack in this book, so I will make a video later to finish up this chapter. So hopefully you took something away from it and keep coming back to look for more videos.